Well, good evening. I think it's fair to say that we had some good bipartisan successes this year. We sent some bills to the governors that strengthened laws against sex trafficking. We finally regulated intoxicating hemp products. We improved employment protections for Missouri National Guard members and expanded benefits for military veterans in general. And we stopped predatory lawsuits that try to shake down Missouri small businesses for cash settlements over minor ADA compliance issues with their websites. And we finally enacted, and finally the governor signed into law a bill that would allow women in the state to get divorced while pregnant. This is a piece of legislation that I'm so excited that Representative Prouty and Representative Williams worked across the aisle together on to get done. You know, despite these successes, this session has got to be considered a failure because of majority Republicans' refusal to do anything to make life more affordable for working Missouri families. On the first day of session, House Democrats said that the absolute top priority for this year must be providing much-needed relief to families struggling to keep up with the ever-rising prices of everything. But Democrats don't set the agenda in this building. And majority Republicans sprinted in the other direction by pushing the governor's plan for a massive sales tax hike on all goods and services, digging the claws of state government even deeper into Missourians' pockets. Instead of making life more affordable, Republicans' disastrous plan would make life more expensive than it already is for working Missourians in a classic case of robbing from the poor and giving to the rich by eliminating the income tax. Few, if any of us, have heard from a single constituent wanting to eliminate the income tax. And they sure haven't asked for higher sales taxes. What they want, what they need, and what they deserve is property tax relief. But the majority decided to shelve this priority in favor of more tax breaks for the wealthy. Republicans have supermajorities in both chambers. If something doesn't pass, it's because they don't want it to pass. An estimated 80% of Missourians would pay higher taxes under the GOP tax swap, while the richest 20% would pay less. This is not sound tax policy. It also isn't what Missourians want or expect from their elected leaders. And we're confident that when the GOP sales tax hike goes on the statewide ballot, voters will overwhelmingly reject it and punish Republican candidates who supported it. I am more than happy to take your questions now.
Property taxes were considered a priority from Republicans from the beginning of session. There was, kind of thoughts up until this week that something would get through. Why do you think it didn't?
Like I said, with a Republican supermajority, if the Republicans don't want something to pass, it will not pass. I think that there was really strong bipartisan cooperation to find some solutions that will really bring some relief to Missourians. Unfortunately, the governor pushed his income tax, sales tax swap plan, and I don't know that there was enough appetite among the majority party to do all of it at once. I think that there was a lot of, like I said, a lot of work went into it. I think that even up till today, we thought that something could happen. But at the end of the day, it didn't. And here we are. I'm going to, a lot of us are going to spend the next 6 months knocking on doors in our districts, talking to voters about what they want. And I guarantee you that this will be another cycle of us hearing from folks that they want property tax relief.
Representative Taylor seemed really upset this morning doing his point of personal privilege on the failure of that. And he mentioned school funding. I know that's obviously a sticking point when it comes to property taxes, but what do you think was the sticking point on this? I know obviously not big investigations, but maybe.
Kathy, would you like to take this one? I'd like to bring Representative Steinhoff. She was much more involved in these conversations.
I think at the beginning, there were just fundamental differences between many people, not just sides of the aisle, about what level of property tax reform was really needed. And so even early in the week when negotiations started to happen to actually move towards something that could potentially become law, I think that's where the negotiations started. As we got further along, I think politics just took over. You know, we had competing interests, what chamber you were from, what party you were from, and how strongly you believed that reform needed to happen. And I think a lot of that got in the way of actually doing something good for Missourians.
I know you don't get a chance to move it, but something did come over from the Senate or late this morning, early this afternoon, after last night kind of fell apart. Do you have any insight into why it didn't get to the floor?
I do not. I know it was sent to fiscal review. I don't know what happened after that point.
So another one of Governor Ikio's priorities that didn't get across the line was the A through F grading. Really, any major bill on education didn't go through this year. Why do you think that is, and kind of thoughts on that? Nothing was able to get done.
Yeah, again, I go back to if there isn't an appetite in the majority, it's not going to get done. And I think that even with the governor pushing a priority, sometimes that does not equate to legislative support. And I think that there was far too much concern on both sides of the aisle, I think, specifically with the A through F bill, but I think that several of the other education priorities that kind of rose to the top this year, I think that there were just negotiations at the end of the session, mostly in the Senate. And when that body gets their hands on a piece of legislation, sometimes it either ends up completely different or it dies a death. And that's what we saw with the education priorities this year.
Does your caucus have an overall opinion about the VLTs, regulating them versus banning them, or is it a mixed review?
It's a mixed bag in the caucus. I think that the VLT issue has been pretty front and center for the last several cycles, and our caucus has had, varying levels of support over the last few sessions. It is an issue that continues to change and evolve, especially with the AG kind of getting more involved this year, and I think that it will be interesting to see what takes shape next year. I think that this year, one of the biggest challenges we had with VLTs, or not challenges, I should say, one of the biggest things that was happening in the building was just a lot of pressure being put on legislators to pass a piece of legislation because of our financial situation in our state. Future budget years are going to be a lot tighter. We know this. And we had a lot of pressure from the VLT lobby to support VLTs for the revenue. And, I think that it clearly there was no appetite in the Senate to get that across the finish line. But, next session will be a new General Assembly, and we'll see what the future holds.
What are some things that didn't make it across this year that you think will either get another push from Republicans, or things that you would like to see next upcoming session?
Oh, man.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I do think that, property tax relief is likely to be a priority. I think that no matter what, folks are really concerned about, the assessment processes in a lot of places in the state, and, a lot of the things around property taxes that we could actually do something about. I think that, there are plenty of pieces of legislation that we care deeply about. There are bills that Democrats have passed, or have filed, I should say. One bill that we were really hopeful that would get across the finish line this session was Representative Plank had a bill to address just some ag education, and it became a vehicle for some of the education priorities that just ended up dying this week. Things like that, things that will make life easier for Missourians, things that will make life more affordable for Missourians. We are always looking to cut the grocery tax, to eliminate taxes on some of the things that we often we pay so much for, right? I'm in Kansas City. Kansas eliminated the grocery tax. It would be so great if Missouri could follow suit. Instead, unfortunately, the governor is trying to raise our sales taxes. I'm happy to open it up to any legislators who want to talk about their priorities. Representative Burton has been working to change regulations on summer camps. That has been a priority. There's legislation around domestic violence and, supporting the organizations in our communities that are doing the real work to support Missouri families. And that will always be the priority of the Democratic caucus here in the House. We are going to continue filing bills that protect marginalized communities. We are going to file bills that make life more affordable and hopefully that get big government out of folks' lives.
Do you see an appetite, given the confusion that county clerks are facing with the question of certification about the People Not Politicians referendum? Do you think that there would even be an appetite on the Republican side next year to clarify this so that when redistricting happens again, and it will happen again, that we don't find ourselves where we are right now?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything from the majority party about that. I would absolutely love to have a conversation about it because I think that we are entering into a really tenuous political cycle of mid-cycle redistricting every 2 years. Across the country. We're seeing courts allowing for redistricting to happen mid-cycle, just like we saw here in Missouri. And I really worry that as the political winds change, so will the attempts at changing our maps. So I would love to have a conversation in this building about how we can address that and how we can avoid a situation where our county clerks are put in a position where they don't quite know how to proceed. I think that is, it's really unfortunate that we've put our public servants in that position, and I think it's also unfortunate that we put candidates in that position. There are folks who are who've been running for office, and and I think that it's confusing for the voters too. And I would love to address that, but I'm not sure there's an appetite for it.
From a strategy standpoint, looking at the August ballot versus the November ballot, the governor has decisions to make about where he puts what. From a strategy standpoint, what's okay to go on the August ballot, what's not, in your opinion?
There are so many there are going to be so many questions on the ballot this year, and I think that it would make a lot of sense to really think about where each question is going to the extent that the governor actually has the ability to do so. My preference would be November. I believe that this is a year that Democratic turnout is going to be about as high as we've seen in this state in a very long time. And I very much look forward to Democrats showing up and letting the supermajority of Republicans in this building know exactly how they feel about the policies they've been pushing.
Up against a supermajority, it can be really hard to get your priorities across the finish line. In your eyes, what were some of the victories, if any, of this legislative session?
Well, the ones I talked about at the top, I think that those are victories. Certainly, again, the bipartisanship around the divorce while pregnant bill, that was huge. It's just a really good example of when you reach across the aisle and you identify a shared value, a shared interest, a shared passion, and you can roll with it. Nothing else matters when you focus on bipartisan legislation like that. We've had some opportunities to. I'm trying to think of some of the. My head is so jumbled right now, y'all. I am so sorry. It has been a long day. Shout out some bipartisan wins, friends.
The healthcare bill.
Oh, the healthcare bill. That was great. I'm really proud of the work that went into that. And once again, Democrats carried that across the finish line. The ag tax credits today, we carried that across the finish line. If you take a look at some of the things, the critical materials bill, that was passed by Democrats as well. The factions in this building are fascinating. And today we saw the conservative caucus rear their head and say, they're trying to kill some tax credits or whatever they wanted to do. But, you know, one thing that I have assured our friends, especially around the ag bill, I will say, you know, one thing I'm really proud of and one thing I'm going to shout out Representative Weber for is she's done a great job of building the relationship between the ag community and the Democratic caucus. And we're really proud of that. We're really proud of, you know, the fact that we may represent mostly the urban and suburban cores of the state, but we care deeply about the ag community. We care deeply about the folks who produce the food that we put on our tables, and we want to make sure that they can do what they do best. And so we're proud to partner with them. We're proud to help them get their priorities across the finish line when they need us, even when you would think that a supermajority of Republicans would easily pass ag priorities, but that's not the case. And so, you know, those are some of the wins that I think that we can be really proud about at the end of the day.
Doula's voter restoration.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Giving women more access to doula care during pregnancy, voting rights restorations. Trade with Ireland, absolutely. We're lots of things working across the aisle, and it can be anything. Right, it can be something as simple and seemingly simple as trade with Ireland, and it could be something as big as making sure that women who are in a domestic violence situation can get out of a marriage. You know, it runs the gamut in this building. Some things seem super serious, some things don't, but it is always something that I know I'm really proud of, and I know my caucus is really proud of when we work with our friends across the aisle to get something done.
Going back to ballot summaries, something that didn't pass this year was the redo of that ability for the Secretary of State to rewrite ballot language. This might be for you, Representative Woods, but how do you feel like that's going to affect amendments and things this year, considering he was heavily involved last year with that and lots of lawsuits? Like, how do you think that's going to affect ballot amendments this year? Ballot measures.
Well, yeah, I'm very grateful that that didn't pass, and I think that that's going to impact ballot measures because we will ideally have fair, simple, cleaner ballot language. You know, the entire intent of that was to, in the beginning, make it easier for the Secretary of State to introduce questionable language, but by the time it got amended on the floor, basically took away the court's ability to hear appeals at all or make any decisions, which was absurd. So, you know, it ended up being a really terrible bill that was, frankly, unconstitutional, but I think the effect of that being struck down previously and not passed again is that when Missourians go to the polls in August or November, hopefully they will have ballot language in front of them that accurately reflects what they're to be voting on.
Thank you.
Going into this regular session, we talked a lot about how the last one ended and the special sessions and all of the tension, and it was really unclear how working together would be or what this session would look like. Now that we're at the end of that, how was that this session? Did you still feel that, or how did you feel like it was working together?
Yeah, I think that we saw kind of a slower start in the Senate, of course, which was, we definitely expected some turbulence over there, certainly more so than over here, because the bulk of the drama happened in the Senate last year at the end of session and during special session. You know, I know that there's always plenty of frustration from our caucus when we don't get our way, but turns out we don't get our way very often. So, you know, we take the losses as they come, and we still show up the next day to fight. And I think that that is the piece that I'm most proud of, and that's the thing that I'm most proud of about the people that are standing behind me today, is that we get knocked down constantly, and we keep getting back up, and we keep fighting. I've lost the train. What was the question? I'm so sorry. I'm just so proud of all of them. Oh, yes, the tension. Sorry. Yeah. So I think that overall the session was. Honestly, it ran a lot smoother than predicted. I think that after a few hiccups in the Senate, they kind of got things rolling, and frankly, they were moving faster today than I've seen them work in years. So, you know, that was impressive. And I do think that here in the House, sure, we have our moments, but I think overall, things were pretty smooth. And I will say that I will give credit to the Majority Floor Leader, Alex Riley. He was really wonderful to work with. He was someone who I was very grateful for. The transparency that he provided and how easy he made the process compared to previous sessions. You know, just as something as simple as letting us know what we're going to be debating that day, which, you know, seems like something we would know all the time, but turns out, no, previous floor leaders didn't tell us. And so, things like that go a long way because it shows courtesy and respect, and, I'm always happy to reciprocate that level of respect. Anything else? All right, thank you all so much. Thank you so much for a great session. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you.